I know what some of you must be wondering. Even if you take the creation week as literal, what makes you think it was only 6,000 years ago? A perfectly valid question. Of course, we should look to the Bible for our answer. What does the Genesis account say? Well, in Genesis 1:32, right after the description of creation week, it says, "And it was thus that the Lord created the heavens and the earth, approximately 6,000 years ago." I mean, it's right there in black and white, people. 6,000 years ago. That's where we get the date for creation is happening 6,000 years ago. Case closed. I'm kidding, of course, but this is the level of silly I feel people have sunk to when they think they've popped my young earth balloon by telling me that there's no Bible verse that says how long ago God created everything. If a verse like that did exist, it would have been wrong the very next year, and increasingly wrong every year after. We don't determine the age of the earth by reading a verse, but by reading lots of them. Specifically, we read those dull, sleep-inducing genealogies in Genesis 5. When Adam had lived 130 years, he had a son in his own likeness, in his own image, and he named him Seth. When Seth had lived 105 years, he became the father of Enosh. When Enosh had lived 90 years, he became the father of Kenan. And on it goes, telling us the ages of everyone from Adam to Noah, and then in Genesis 11 to Abraham, and on it goes until we have all sorts of other historical markers to line things up with. In short, if you can balance a checkbook, then you have the math skills to figure out how long ago creation happened. It puts creation week at about 6,000 years ago. Answers in Genesis does all the math for you and explains it in detail. You really ought to send them a thank you note for all the work they've done for you. One of the reasons for my confidence in this method is the pitiful weak sauce arguments against it. I heard a podcast not long ago where two gentlemen attempted to determine if we could calculate the age of the earth from these genealogies as young earth creationists claim. Naturally, they started their discussion with a close look at the genealogies given in the book of Matthew? Well, of course that offered no help, as Matthew's genealogies are not a complete list, nor do they give any ages at all. And also, they're not in the book of Genesis. So, of course, then these two guys turned to the Old Testament and took a look at the book of Chronicles? Are these guys kidding me? How in the world are you supposed to figure out whether or not you can calculate the age of the earth from the genealogies given in Genesis when you keep looking not in Genesis? I could not believe these cretins. I'm sure it'll come as no surprise that they somehow failed to come to the creation date of about 6,000 years ago. People do this kind of thing all the time, and it makes me wonder how they sleep at night. Do they do this with other literary questions? I expected their next podcast to sound like this. Some people have claimed that the characters of Bob Cratchit and Pip are both Charles Dickens' depiction of his own father, as told to him by his Aunt Shelley Dubois. They cite her memoirs as giving anecdotes that both relate to the development of these two characters. To see if this claim has any validity, we will be looking at Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree and then the second book in the Twilight series. People will often claim that there are gaps in these lists of names in Genesis, but all you have to do is read it for yourself. Dude was this old, and he had a son. That son was this old, and he had a son. That son was this old, and over and over. If you can fit a dozen more generations between a dude and his own son, then you let me know how it's done. Whatever you come up with, I suspect it will not paint his wife in a very flattering light. But again, I digress. In summation, the Bible and math are both good tools for discovering why people like me believe the young earth creation model. In future installments of this series, I shall be adding science to the mix and showing how it too supports the biblical account. In the meantime, I'm going to read Green Eggs and Ham to see if I can't determine whether the timing of the Emancipation Proclamation was exacerbated by the cost of the war or if Lincoln thought of himself as being from Mars. After all, if I've learned anything from the methods people use to criticize the young earth creation model, well, it isn't much. Thanks everybody for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing, and remember, Jesus loves you.